Do you want to take a shower together? A shower? What the hell are you thinking? Of course, that's not okay. Why do you say it's not okay? Do you even need to ask? It's obviously not okay. Hey Lucille, do you not want to take a shower with me? Well, I guess it wouldn't really bother me. See? Plus, it's not that strange for a family to shower together, right? I was frozen in shock by my daughter Lucille's unexpected words. While I was still stunned, my husband Nolan took her by the hand and led her to the shower. Nolan and Lucille have a close relationship and sometimes even sleep in the same bed. While having a close family isn't a bad thing, this situation felt wrong to me. There was something else bothering me too. Lucille, who is 15, is in the middle of her teenage years. She never shows any rebellious behavior and is generally a good kid. However, her expression is always dark. I once worried she might be sick, but she gained weight so quickly that her school uniform no longer fit. It didn't seem like she was sick after all. There were just too many things bothering me, and I found myself constantly worried. My worries started to come into focus with a single phone call. We're fine. Who was that? Oh, just a spam call. They were asking if we were interested in investing. Who would listen to such a shady offer these days? Nolan laughed it off as just a spam call, but his face looked strained. His complexion was also pale. Well, I guess I should head to work. Already? You're early today. Yeah, I have a lot of reservations, so I thought I'd get a head start on the prep work. Usually, Nolan leaves for work after lunch, but today he hurried out of the house. It felt to me like he was running away from something. Later, I found out that the call was from a counselor. When I learned the reason for the call, anger surged within me. I found myself gripping the phone receiver so tightly I thought I might crush it. I will never forgive anyone who hurts my precious daughter. My name is Kathy. I'm 42 years old and an ordinary office worker. My husband Nolan is a year older and works in the restaurant industry. Our daughter Lucille is 15, and up until now, the three of us have lived happily together as a family. However, with Lucille entering her teenage years, our family dynamics have become slightly strained. Dad! When you come home, take a shower first. Sitting on the sofa without showering is just unacceptable. I'm tired. I'll take a shower after a little rest. This is unbelievable. The sofa will rot. Lucille hurled harsh words at Nolan, who had just returned home exhausted from work without even greeting him. This scene has become familiar recently. When Nolan heads to the shower, Lucille sprays air freshener on the sofa with an annoyed expression. Feeling sorry for Nolan, I try to ease the situation a bit. Dad is working hard too. You should be a bit nicer to him. Why are you so cold to Dad? I just can't stand him for some reason. She speaks normally to me. Her cold attitude is reserved for Nolan alone, and there seems to be no clear reason for it. From my own experience, I know that daughters sometimes dislike their fathers without reason. I feel sorry for fathers with daughters. However, some fathers do get along well with their daughters. Nolan has a colleague who often talks about this. A guy at work has a 14-year-old daughter, and she has no problem going out with him. If it were us, Lucille would just say no without hesitation. This is one of those things with no clear reason, so it's tough to solve. Maybe the best approach is to be patient and not get too disliked until her teenage years pass. No, it doesn't have to be like that. That guy at work says there are things he consciously does to get along with his daughter. I heard about them, and I'm going to try them out. Nolan looks confident. Seeing a successful example, he probably believes he can do it too. Though I think it won't be that easy, it would be great if Nolan and Lucille could get along better. I decided to watch how Nolan handles it. The first thing Nolan tackled was his clothing. His work attire is denim jeans and a black shirt, with a bandana and apron at work. Since his work clothes are similar to casual wear, he often wears the same denim and black shirt on his days off because it's comfortable. Realizing this wasn't helping, Nolan decided to stop wearing his work clothes outside of work and started buying new clothes. Additionally, working in a restaurant means he often smells like food at the end of the day. So, he started paying more attention to personal hygiene than before. Nolan also heard from his colleague that maintaining a regular routine is important. Oh, you're up quite early today. I've decided to wake up at the same time as you too. Are you sure you can handle it? You work late into the night. It's fine. Give me the same breakfast as you. Seeing him at the breakfast table in the morning was unusual. His job kept him working late, starting in the early afternoon, so he was usually still asleep when I left for work and Lucille went to school. However, this routine was reducing his communication with the family and possibly giving Lucille the impression that he was a late riser. To counter this, Nolan started waking up early to join us for breakfast. Nolan made various efforts like this. Seeing how hard he was trying, I began to hope that he might actually manage to get along with Lucille. It's disgusting. Reality can be harsh. Lucille dismissed Nolan's efforts to bond with her as gross before heading off to school. I worried that this might have crushed Nolan's spirit. Even this isn't working. What else can I do? Maybe I should ask for more advice. Nolan muttered to his toast, seemingly undeterred. Seeing him trying so earnestly, I felt I needed to do more than just watch. I wanted to help. After all, a harmonious relationship between parents and children is ideal. Let's keep trying a bit longer. I'll help too. Thank you. Let's strive to be a closer family. With renewed determination, Nolan took a big bite of his toast, which he had been talking to as if it were a confidant. At that moment, I had no idea that his efforts and determination would lead us down such an unexpected and disastrous path. Together, we began implementing a plan to improve Lucille's feelings towards Nolan. My first step was to show more affection towards him. Apparently, when children see their mothers getting along well with their fathers, it can sometimes improve their relationship with their fathers as well. Honey, I'll get dinner ready, so go take a shower. Okay, thanks. I'm sorry for always putting you out. What are you talking about? You work late and come home exhausted. This is the least I can do. From the kitchen, Lucille watched our exchange from the living room. When Nolan headed to the shower, Lucille looked at me with a curious expression. What is it? You've been nice to Dad lately. Did something happen? Everything's normal. Maybe you just haven't noticed because you've been avoiding him. Maybe. This approach seemed promising. Lucille used to avoid being near Nolan, but now she's starting to observe him. I also gather information about Lucille's surroundings for Nolan in case they have a conversation. By the way, I heard there was a kid caught shoplifting in your grade. Do you know them? Yeah, I know who they are, but we've never been in the same class, and I've never talked to them. Okay. Just make sure you never do anything like that. Of course not. I know, I just wanted to remind you. Since the kid caught shoplifting isn't close to her, it's a safe topic to bring up. I decided to share this information with Nolan later. Nolan and I continued our steady efforts together. Thanks to these efforts, Nolan and Lucille's relationship started to improve. Are you going to watch TV? Hold on, I'll move to the kitchen chair. No, Dad. Sit on the couch and watch with me. Really? Of course. It's a hassle to move your drinks and snacks, right? Do you need a drink? I can get one from the fridge. Lucille spoke to Nolan with a smile, and even went to the fridge to get him a drink. I never thought I'd see such a miracle. I was happy, but I also wondered why Lucille had changed so suddenly. Perhaps our efforts had a significant impact on her during her sensitive teenage years. It felt good to think so, so I decided to believe that was the case. The two of them sat on the couch watching TV together, and Nolan gave me a proud look from the kitchen. His expression was a bit smug, but I let it go since he had worked hard and was happy to see results. I thought we could return to being a happy family of three. However, soon after, some strange things began to happen. Lucille, I bought some ice cream from the grocery store. Do you want to eat it together? Yeah, I'll have some. Lucille no longer avoided Nolan, but she no longer smiled as she used to. Are you okay? Are you feeling sick? No, I'm fine. I just think eating ice cream at night will make me gain weight, so I'll have it tomorrow. All right, I'll put it in the fridge for you. Thanks. She then retreated to her room. Her behavior towards Nolan and me hadn't changed, but her expression remained dark, which worried me. Hey, lately Lucille's been acting strange. Have you heard anything? She mentioned she's stressed about school. Maybe that's it. She has worries? Hasn't she told you? If she hasn't mentioned it, I don't feel right being the one to tell you. But I'm the only one left out. She'll probably tell you herself soon. Just give her time. I'll handle it until then. I felt a mix of agreement and dissatisfaction with Nolan's words. However, given Nolan and Lucille's improved relationship, I decided to trust him. Okay, I'll go talk to her now. Nolan carried a tray with 2 ice creams and juice, looking confident as he headed to her room. Shortly after he left the living room, I heard a door close. It seemed he was allowed into her room, which was a significant improvement compared to the days when she would hurl harsh words at him for sitting on the sofa. Yet, I still hadn't been confided in about her worries. It felt like my role had reversed with Nolan's. Having no other option, I decided to quietly take a shower and go to bed. The next morning, a minor commotion occurred. When I woke up, Nolan was not beside me. Assuming he was up early again, I went to the living room. But he wasn't there either. Nor was he in the bathroom. Wondering where he had gone, I heard the sound of Lucille's door opening. Last night, Lucille had talked with Nolan, so she might know something. Lucille, do you know where Dad is? What? I'm here. Where were you? I slept in Lucille's room. Last night, she got anxious while we were talking and asked me to stay with her. Lucille, is that true? Yeah, it's true. It's embarrassing to admit I couldn't sleep alone like a kid. Don't say anything more about it. Lucille quickly got ready and left for school without eating breakfast. Her expression remained dark. Although Nolan listened to her, it seemed her worries weren't resolved. Lucille's worries were concerning, but there was something even more pressing on my mind at that moment. You know, no matter how anxious Lucille was, I think it's inappropriate for you to sleep together. She's 15 now. I get it. But last night she was so anxious, she was almost in tears asking me to stay with her. I couldn't refuse. Did that solve her worries? No, not yet. She might still have trouble sleeping alone. Are you planning to sleep with her every time she asks? Are you suggesting I ignore Lucille when she's anxious and asking for help? All right, if it's necessary, then it can't be helped. But can you sleep in our bedroom instead of hers? Got it. I felt like I was worrying unnecessarily. However, leaving Nolan and Lucille alone in a room seemed wrong, so I proposed the compromise of sleeping together as a family. From then on, about once every 3 days, Lucille would come to our bedroom, and Nolan and Lucille would sleep in the same bed. Though I didn't know what her worries were, it was clear they wouldn't be solved just by sleeping together. Good morning. Breakfast is ready. Thank you. Despite some time passing, Lucille's expression remained gloomy. Her attitude towards us hadn't changed, it was still sincere. Since only her expression was dark, I wondered if she was sick. However, her appetite hadn't decreased. In fact, she had gained weight recently to the point where her uniform no longer fit. It seemed unlikely she was ill, though her skin had become rough. Have you gained weight? Your skin is breaking out too. Are you eating too many snacks? Or is it a breakup? I intended the joke to lighten the tension, but it seemed to cross a line. Lucille left for school after only a couple of bites of her breakfast. Ah, that was a mistake. It seemed I had even lost the ability to gauge my distance with Lucille. Speaking to the bread in frustration, I realized how much my position had reversed with Nolan's. Then, adding insult to injury, Nolan suggested something shocking to Lucille. Lucille, want to take a shower together? A shower? I nearly dropped the plate I was holding while washing dishes. I could barely tolerate them sharing a bed, but a shower was too much. A shower? What the hell are you thinking? Of course, that's not okay. Why are you saying no to Lucille and me taking a shower together? It would make sense if Lucille didn't want to. Do you even need to ask? Of course it's not okay. Hey Lucille, do you mind showering with me? I don't really mind. See, Lucille and I are close now. And it's not that strange for family to shower together, is it? Stunned by Lucille's unexpected response, I felt my mind freeze. I couldn't think straight and was in a state of panic. Before I could react, Nolan took Lucille's hand and led her to the shower. The sound of the shower running echoed from the bathroom. Though Lucille had said she didn't mind, I couldn't accept it. I sat on the living room sofa, holding my head in my hands, questioning if this was really okay. After a few minutes of panic, my mind began to regain a bit of its calm. Thinking clearly, I knew this couldn't go on. Honey, this really isn't okay. You can't shower with Lucille anymore. But she said it was fine. Even if Lucille says it's fine, it's not. Some things are just off limits. All right. No need to raise your voice. Nolan returned to the living room, drying his hair with a towel. Lucille didn't come to the living room, she went straight to her room. I gave Nolan a silent look, making it clear that showering with Lucille was off limits. Though he looked displeased, he saw my anger and reluctantly agreed. A few days later, on a Saturday, I had a day off while Nolan was scheduled to work from the afternoon. Lucille and I were at home. And Nolan was up early as usual. It was a typical, uneventful morning until we received a phone call. I'll get it. You keep folding the laundry. Nolan answered the phone, which was a normal occurrence. However, what followed was anything but ordinary. No, we're not interested. Nolan's voice was louder than usual, and he quickly hung up. Startled by his raised voice in the quiet house, I flinched slightly. Who was that? Oh, just a nuisance call. Someone asking if we're interested in investments. Who falls for those scams these days? Though he was laughing, his expression was strained. And he looked pale. Well, I should get going to work. Already? You're leaving early today. Yeah, there are a lot of reservations, so I thought I'd do some extra prep. Normally, he would leave after lunch, but today, he hurried out. As if fleeing from something. The next day, Sunday, I was off again, and Nolan had another afternoon shift. Lucille, being off school, was at home as well, creating a similar scene to the previous day. Again, around the same time, the phone rang. No, we're not interested. Stop calling us. Nolan raised his voice and quickly hung up the phone. Startled by his loud voice in the quiet house, I dropped the laundry I was holding. Who was that? It was another nuisance call from the same place as yesterday. Nolan's complexion was even worse than before. Almost as white as a sheet. I was worried about Nolan, whose behavior was clearly abnormal. Are you feeling okay? You don't look well. Are you sure it was just a nuisance call? I told you it was. I told them not to call anymore, so it's fine. Nolan then rushed out of the house. As if to escape my questions. If it were truly a nuisance call as he claimed, just yelling at them wouldn't be enough to stop them from calling again. They would likely call back. And I decided that next time, I would answer the phone myself. However, after that, the nuisance calls stopped. Puzzled, but relieved that Nolan wouldn't be disturbed anymore, I chose to put the matter behind me. A week later, around midday, an envelope arrived. The sender was the Child Welfare Office. As I opened it and read the contents, mentioning an investigation and various other things, images of Nolan and Lucille sharing a bed and showering together flashed through my mind, sending a chill down my spine. Perhaps someone heard Nolan bragging about his closeness with Lucille and reported it to the Child Welfare Office. But Lucille willingly went to Nolan's bed, and though they showered together once, I had stopped it immediately. I intended to end their sleeping arrangements once Lucille's issues were resolved. While I had my concerns about their relationship, both seemed content, so I didn't think it warranted intervention by the Child Welfare Office. However, assuming this was about Nolan and Lucille might be jumping to conclusions. It could be a general survey or even a mistake. Regardless, it seemed prudent to contact them. Assuming it wasn't a serious matter, I called the Child Welfare Office, but I was soon confronted with a shocking truth. As I listened, anger welled up inside me, and I gripped the phone receiver so tightly I feared I might crush it. I would never forgive anyone who hurt my dear Lucille. That night, after calling the Child Welfare Office, Lucille and I sat on the living room sofa, waiting for Nolan to come home. Lucille's face bore a resolute expression, ready to say whatever needed to be said. This would undoubtedly be hard for her. But I needed her to muster her courage for this one moment. I'm home. I bought some pudding. It's from the grocery store, but would you like to share some? Nolan returned home as usual, unaware of what awaited him. I glared at him. And the tense atmosphere between Lucille and me seemed to make Nolan realize something was wrong. Instead of heading to the living room sofa, he went to the kitchen, placing the pudding he had bought on the dining table. What's with the scary face? Don't worry, I got pudding for you too, Nolan said with a forced smile. He seemed to understand the situation he was in but appeared to be playing dumb, unwilling to accept reality. While I could understand the desire to avoid facing reality, it wasn't something I could allow. I forced Nolan to face the truth. I already know everything, I said, my voice steady. Everything? He replied, his face turning even paler. Yes, everything. What you did to Lucille and how you blocked the calls from the Child Welfare Office to cover it up. Nolan glanced at my expression and then at Lucille's. Realizing there was no escape, he collapsed to the floor. I had already heard everything from Lucille and the child welfare office. But I needed to hear it from Nolan's own mouth. It all started when Lucille's friend got caught shoplifting, right? Yeah. When Mom asked me about it, I said I didn't really know the person who got caught, but she was actually my friend. And then that friend told you it would be serious if she got caught again, so she asked you to shoplift for her, right? Yes. And then I got caught by the store staff. I really think it was a stupid thing to do now. Lucille's voice was trembling. At 15, Lucille was still immature and had made a mistake in her choice of friends. Although it must be painful for her to talk about it now, I wanted her to endure it this once to discuss it with Nolan and to reaffirm the wrongness of her actions. So, you got caught by the store, right? That was on a weekday, on your way to school, at grocery store. Since I was already at work, Nolan got the call from the store and went to apologize, right? Yeah, I apologized to the store and begged them not to contact the police or the school. They finally agreed. That much is fine, but what happened after that is the problem. Explain it yourself, I demanded. I wanted Lucille to think well of me, so I decided to keep the shoplifting a secret from you. I made it our little secret, pretending it never happened. And Lucille appreciated you for that and started acting more cheerful around you, I said, my head aching from hearing the confirmation of what I already knew. I wasn't confident in my parenting skills, but I knew Nolan's actions were entirely wrong. Up to this point, Lucille had made many mistakes. However, from here on, it was entirely Nolan's fault. Lucille made a mistake with her friends, but what happened next was entirely your fault. Now, tell us what you did to her, I pressed. I threatened to tell you and the school about the shoplifting if she didn't do as I said, Nolan admitted. You blackmailed her into sleeping in the same bed and showering with you. Unbelievable! Lucille's face darkened, recalling the times she had slept in the same bed as Nolan and taken showers together. This was the expression I had seen on her face frequently lately. With her weakness exposed, Lucille couldn't defy Nolan and became his puppet. The appearance of harmony between Lucille and Nolan was a facade. In reality, she was under immense stress. Moreover, the stress had started affecting her physically. Do you know how much Lucille has suffered? She developed polycystic ovary syndrome. What? Is that a disease? Yes, it is. The stress from you caused her to get sick. No way, but she doesn't look sick. Nolan was shocked to hear about Lucille's illness, but it was his fault. I wanted him to feel the full weight of his responsibility, but I didn't want his concern. Like Nolan, I initially didn't believe Lucille was ill. We thought she wasn't sick because of her physical appearance. Lucille had suddenly gained weight, to the point where her uniform no longer fit. However, it wasn't due to overeating. Polycystic ovary syndrome is a condition where the growth of follicles in the ovaries is halted, resulting in numerous small cysts remaining in the ovaries. It is said to be caused by hormonal imbalance, likely brought on by the immense stress Lucille endured from Nolan. The main symptoms of this disease include irregular menstrual cycles and infertility, but it can also lead to weight gain and skin issues. When did she go to the hospital? Today. We received a letter from Child Protective Services, and the counselor suggested she should be examined. Oh right, CPS. I boasted about getting closer to Lucille, but I never told anyone about sleeping together or taking showers. You learned about it from the letter, right? Who contacted them? It was me. Lucille, you did it yourself? She wanted to break free from Dad's control, but couldn't consult Mom because of the shoplifting incident. She had no one to turn to, so she called CPS. They told her to be honest with Mom about the shoplifting, but she couldn't do it herself. Lucille couldn't say it herself, so she asked CPS to inform us. That's why we got the call when I was home over the weekend. But you answered the call and even blocked CPS from calling us again. What were you thinking? Blocking calls won't help. Well, but isn't it good for parents and children to get along? And the shoplifting was Lucille's fault to begin with. Don't say such foolish things. Yes, Lucille shoplifting was wrong. But it's also our responsibility as her parents. We must make her atone for her mistakes and learn from them. Nolan's misguided words pushed me beyond my breaking point. It was clear that I couldn't stay married to Nolan any longer. We're getting a divorce. Wait. Why divorce? Don't say you don't know the reason. How can you think we can continue being a family after hurting Lucille so badly? Well, pack your things and leave, will you? Nolan stood up weakly and walked out of the house. After that, Nolan and I divorced. I reported to the counselor that we had divorced, I had taken custody of Lucille, and Nolan was prohibited from contacting her. I thought that would be the end of the issue with the counselor, but it wasn't that simple. Nolan had been inappropriately close to Lucille when they slept and had even washed her in the shower. This was reported to the police as potential sexual abuse. As a result, Nolan was arrested. Although he wasn't prosecuted in the end, the fact that he was arrested for sexual abuse was serious. Nolan wasn't fired from his job, but the cold stares and reactions from people around him were inevitable. It was impossible for him to continue working in such an environment, so Nolan quit his job. He must have wanted to be somewhere where no one knew him because he soon disappeared. As long as Nolan pays child support every month, I don't care what he does or where he is. All I want is for him to stay away from us. I don't think I'll ever see him again. Lucille regretted her shoplifting and is now seriously preparing for her exams. She seems genuinely remorseful, so I believe she'll be fine from now on. With Nolan out of sight, the stress that contributed to her illness has lifted. She still takes medication but is on the road to recovery. I realize I was also at fault in this situation. If I had noticed Lucille's distress earlier, we could have resolved this sooner. Now that I'm a single mother, I can't afford to be so oblivious. I reflect on my shortcomings as a parent and resolve to focus more on her from now on. One day, as I returned home from my usual night shift, I noticed that the house lights were on, which was unusual. Lately, my daughter Alethea would only come home when I wasn't there, so it was rare for us to be in the house together. When I opened the door and stepped inside, I saw Alethea rummaging through the closet. Stop acting like a thief! Maybe it was because I was tired from work, but those words came out before I could say welcome home to my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in a while. What? This is my house, too. What's here is mine as well, she said, holding a bank statement I had been saving in her name for years. Wait a minute, that's something I've been saving carefully to give to you when you grow up. What are you planning to use it for? When I asked her frantically, she replied indifferently, I'm getting married. I had so many questions. Who is he? Where did you meet him? Have you met his family? What about the wedding? But she wouldn't answer any of them. You're an embarrassment. Don't come to the wedding. As far as anyone knows, my mom is out of the picture, divorced and gone. With those final words, she left the house. Everything inside me crumbled. I had put her first, always, raising her on my own. My very existence was being denied. I was paralyzed in the middle of the room she had ransacked, but eventually, I realized I couldn't stay like this, and I made a phone call. Months passed, and today is her wedding day. I watched her from the shadows in her bridal gown. I never wanted to see her in such a beautiful dress like this. Today was the first time I saw the groom's face. An older, kind-looking man smiled at her. "Are you ready for the plan?" the woman next to me asked, and I nodded firmly. "My name is Francis, and I'm 47 years old. I live alone in a cheap apartment. I used to live with my daughter Alethea, but she left months ago, and we haven't been in touch since. Even though I called her my daughter, we're not related by blood. She's the stepchild of my late husband, David, who I married after both of us had gone through divorces. David had divorced his first wife 3 years before we met because she cheated on him. In a furious custody battle, he won the right to raise Alethea. But the year after we married, he was diagnosed with cancer. Treat her like your own daughter. Be firm but kind. Those were his last words before he passed away. It's been 13 years since then. The only thing left was me and Alethea, who wasn't related to me by blood and who I'd known for less than a year. When Alethea was still in elementary school, I worked desperately to support her. I had children from my previous marriage. But we divorced due to irreconcilable differences. Without my parents' support and as a housewife, I found it hard to raise my children, and custody went to my ex-husband. But now, there was no one to protect her but me. Determined to raise a child properly this time, I didn't slack off on work or house chores. Meanwhile, Alethea barely reacted to me from the time David brought her to our home. I remember the first time I met Alethea, before David and I were married, when he invited me to his house. "Nice to meet you, Alethea." She was a bit younger than my children from my previous marriage. I crouched down to meet Alethea's gaze and spoke to her. However, she only briefly made eye contact before quickly returning to her play. "Alethea, this is the woman I told you about who's going to be your new mother." Even though David said this, her attitude did not change. And that was understandable. A young girl, still in elementary school, suddenly loses her mother, and after a while, a new woman is introduced as her mother. It's natural for her to show some resistance. Moreover, after divorcing my ex-husband, I started working at a club. It was at that club where I met David. He came to the club where I was working as a customer and apparently fell in love with me at first sight. He started coming to the club regularly, but David was different from the other customers. He didn't cause any trouble with alcohol like the others, nor did he ever do anything unpleasant. David was always kind to me. Customers like this are rare, and as time went on, my initial wariness turned into a slight guilt for thinking, he's paying good money just to see me. So, one day, I decided to ask him directly. I'm really glad you come here to see me, but are you having fun? You can enjoy yourself more freely, you know?" Even though I knew that saying something like this might mean he'd never come back, I couldn't help but ask. "No, I come here because I want to see you, Francis." "Is that so bad?" David said this, his cheeks slightly blushing with embarrassment. I couldn't believe he was lying, and I was genuinely happy that he enjoyed our conversations so much. Gradually, I started looking forward to seeing David as a customer and eagerly awaited his visits to the club. Several months passed since he began visiting the club regularly. "I want to date you with marriage in mind." One day, he came to the club as usual, but this time, he brought a bouquet of flowers and said those words. I was surprised by the sudden proposal, but that very day, I decided to quit the club. From the time he began visiting the club, we both knew about each other's past divorces, and I knew that David had taken custody of his daughter. I genuinely wanted to be a proper mother this time. That's the story of how we ended up together. I wasn't sure how much David had explained to Alethea or how much she understood, but I knew she probably didn't think well of me. Even though I had quit the club when we became a couple, club work was still club work. I had come to feel a sense of pride in my job, but I understood that most people wouldn't get it. Still, I wanted Alethea to gradually accept me as her mother, so I was determined to make an effort. However, 1 year later, David passed away. When he died, to support Alethea on my own, I returned to the club I had once quit. From then on, to solidify my resolve to be Alethea's mother, I started calling her Allie. Allie. It's dinner time. When I first called Alethea Allie, she looked surprised for a moment. But that was her only reaction, and my plan to get closer to her as a mother didn't seem to touch her heart. Alethea, who had already struggled to fit in at school, completely stopped attending after David's death. However, after starting junior high school, Alethea began to stay out all day and night, hanging out with friends I didn't know where she met. She never consulted me about anything. As her mother, I gently advised her that what she was doing wasn't good for her, but her resistance grew stronger, and it often turned into arguments. Whenever there was an opportunity, Alethea would say to me, "You're not my biological mother." Whenever she said that, I couldn't say anything more. Indeed, although I had officially become Alethea's mother, we still hadn't become a real family. David's death happened just when we were starting to slowly become a family of 3. Even I didn't know how to spend time with Alethea after suddenly becoming her sole caregiver. Even so, as I began to feel sad about her words, I thought that perhaps I was gradually becoming her mother in spirit. The time Alethea and I spent together at home gradually decreased. Even when she wasn't at home, I felt relieved if I saw signs that she had been there when I returned, thinking, at least she's alive and well today. However, most of the time when I came back from work, she wasn't home, and I often found that money had been taken from my wallet. Even though we are family, that's something I cannot tolerate. When Alethea was home, I gently told her, "If you're in trouble, please talk to me. Don't just steal money from my wallet." But she yelled, "Shut up," and ran out. At this point, I wondered if I would ever be able to build a good parent-child relationship with her. Just before she finished junior high school, there was a day when I came home earlier than usual. Since she was usually asleep at that time, I entered the house quietly. Today too, I quietly unlocked the door and entered the house, only to hear sobbing from the back room. Alethea was crying alone. Even when David died, Alethea never shed a tear in front of me, but now I realized for the first time that she cried alone where no one could see. I listened quietly, trying not to make a sound. Why did Mom leave me? Why did Dad have to die? The new mom didn't listen to me. Even though she rebelled against me, she was still a junior high school student. Both her parents were gone, and the only one left was a mother in name only, with no blood relation. Moreover, having that mother work at a club must have been unbearable. I realized too late what was truly important. I hadn't noticed the chance Alethea had given me. It was one holiday. Before Alethea left, she muttered softly, "Hey, Francis, why don't you quit working at the club?" It was the first time she had said anything about my job. At the time, I didn't understand why she said that. But now I understand. Alethea was giving me a chance to quit working at the club and become a normal parent. Yet I can't quit because I need the money to raise you. Besides, I'm proud of this job now. Responded. That night, Alethea didn't come home. She might have been crying somewhere. If I remember correctly, it was after that day that she started coming home less frequently. I had completely lost my qualifications as a mother at that moment. If only I had thought more about her. I am a failure as a mother. I accidentally voiced my thoughts, and she noticed and ran out of the house. However, I couldn't chase after her. The image of her tear-stained, red face wouldn't leave my mind. I couldn't decide whether chasing her was the right thing to do as a mother or if I should leave her alone. I just stood there, crying alone. As if that day had never happened, our relationship remained unchanged. Alethea stopped going to high school and started working part-time every day, seemingly to avoid being at home. Of course, she never told me where or what kind of job she had. She probably stayed over at friends' houses because there were more and more days when she didn't come home. We're not related by blood. I'm not Alethea's real mother. But David entrusted Alethea to me, asking me to be a parent to her. That worry never ceased for even a moment. I don't know how many times I cried thinking about it. I wished for another chance, thinking maybe I could still make things right. Even so, all I could do was work hard, trying to raise Alethea as a mother. So I never realized I wasn't making time for my daughter as a mother. What was truly needed wasn't money, a clean house, or delicious meals, but time spent together. One day, as usual, I came home after work to find the house lights on, which was rare. By this time, Alethea only came home when I wasn't there, so it was unusual for us to be at home together. When I opened the front door and went inside, I saw Alethea rummaging through the closet. "Stop doing things like a thief!" Maybe because I was tired from work, the first words out of my mouth to my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in a while, were those rather than a welcome back. "What? This is my house too. Everything here is mine as well, right?" she said, holding a bank statement that I had been saving under her name for a long time. "Wait, that's something I was saving to give you when you grew up. What are you going to use it for?" When I frantically questioned her, she coldly replied, "I'm getting married." I had so many questions. Who is the person? Where did you meet? Have you met their family? What about the wedding? But no matter what I asked, Alethea didn't answer anything. It's always been that way. She never tells me anything important. "Just shut up. It has nothing to do with you. Leave me alone." Alethea was the first to raise her voice. "Wait a minute. It's not right that you don't tell me anything as your mother." I couldn't help but get angry too, and it seemed like an argument was about to start. "Listen, you're an embarrassment. You're not invited to the wedding. I don't have a mother who works at a club. My mom is supposed to be divorced and out of the picture." With those final words, she left the house. Everything inside me collapsed with a crashing sound. I had neglected myself to raise her all this time. My job was criticized, and I was told there was no such thing as a mother. My entire existence was denied. Alethea probably won't come back home anymore. My role as a mother crumbled away so easily, ending abruptly. I was frozen in the middle of the room that Alethea had trashed, unable to move for a while, but eventually, I knew I couldn't stay like this and made a phone call. Several months passed, and today is Alethea's wedding day. I was watching from the shadows as she stood in her wedding dress. I never wanted to see Alethea in her beautiful dress under these circumstances, I thought. Today was the first time I saw the groom's face. Tall, with a kind, mature face, he smiled gently at Alethea. The woman beside me asked, "Are you ready to make your move?" and I nodded firmly. With a composed demeanor, I said, "Excuse me," and entered the room with the woman. Hearing my voice, Alethea and the groom's family turned to look at us. When Alethea realized one of the people entering was me. "Ma'am, I told you not to come," she shouted. The woman next to me replied, "Excuse me, but are you a staff member of this venue?" She pretended not to know me. The truth is, the woman beside me was indeed a staff member at the venue and my biological daughter, Johanna. Alethea understood this too and glared sharply at Johanna. Although Johanna was not the couple's planner, they must have met a few times during the preparations. Now, for the first time, the two sisters who had never met were glaring at each other. Even after my divorce from my ex-husband, my relationship with Johanna remained good, with occasional phone calls and meeting once or twice a year. The day Alethea left home, the person I called was Johanna. I told her all about the incident with Alethea on the phone. Even after the divorce, Johanna continued to treat me as her mother. After my divorce from my ex-husband, I worked hard at a job at a club, which I now enjoy, but it was very tough at the time. With my ex-husband having custody, I felt I no longer had the right to see Johanna, so I spent my days just going back and forth between the club and home. Maybe I wanted to forget about Johanna quickly. After being engrossed in club work for a year, I received an email on my smartphone. It simply said, "Mom, I want to see you." She must have gotten a smartphone when she started junior high school, and I knew immediately that the email was from Johanna. I was happy that she still thought of me as her mother despite losing my right as her mother. However, I lacked the confidence to meet her, thinking I didn't deserve it, so I couldn't reply to her email for a while. After exchanging a few more emails, we decided on a date and place to meet, and it was really going to happen. On the morning of the meeting, I was so nervous I couldn't eat breakfast. I was terrified that this might be the last time I saw her. Although I wouldn't say, "Let's cancel the meeting," I was so worried that she might be disappointed. When I arrived at the meeting place, I saw Johanna. Children grow up so fast. Even though it had only been a year, Johanna had grown taller and her hair had grown longer since the last time I saw her. "Johanna." I called her name timidly. When Johanna heard my voice, she turned around and, as soon as she saw my face, she ran to me and hugged me tightly. "Ma'am." I felt my grown-up daughter in my arms. "It's been a long time," I said to Johanna, holding back my tears. "Ma'am, I missed you so much." Just those words melted away all my worries. We entered the cafe while chatting, and I ordered Johanna's favorite parfait and orange juice, along with my coffee. Johanna talked a lot about her current life. Her ex-husband is still working as usual, and Johanna handles more than half of the housework. Her mother-in-law also comes by regularly to help with chores. Johanna is passionate about cooking and proudly told me that her specialty is meatloaf. Although she divorced her ex-husband, she didn't come to hate him as a person. She believes that her ex-husband will take care of Johanna until she fully grows up. On a whim, I asked Johanna what she thought of me. "After I divorced your father, Johanna, you lost your mother, and I know this past year alone has been really tough for you. I came prepared to hear that I no longer deserve to be called your mother." As her mother, I shouldn't have been so weak in front of my daughter, Johanna. Yet Johanna smiled and began to speak slowly. "Dad and Ma'am decided to live separately, but that doesn't mean Ma'am stops being my Ma'am. I know that Ma'am cares about me. So let's continue to be mother and daughter in our own way." Hearing this, I felt that Johanna was an incredibly mature person, far more than I deserved to call my daughter. Despite being such an imperfect mother, she still allows me to be her mother. From that day on, Johanna and I started keeping in regular contact and meeting up often. I gave her birthday and Christmas presents, gift cards, and celebrated her milestones like school entries and graduations. Although our relationship was different from a typical parent-child relationship, I began to believe I could do my best as Johanna's one and only mother. When I decided to remarry, I made sure to meet with Johanna and talk to her. Not only was I getting remarried, but my new partner had children. I was about to become a parent to another child. Of course, this didn't mean I would lose interest in Johanna, but I knew she might feel conflicted. Still, I didn't want to remarry without being honest with Johanna, so I decided to tell her the truth. If ma'am can be happy with this, it's fine. But will you stay the same even after you remarry? Johanna asked anxiously. Of course. To ease her worries, I hugged her tightly. Reassured by my words, Johanna gave her blessing for my remarriage. Even after remarrying, my relationship with Johanna remained unchanged. At first, I avoided talking about Alethea, but when Johanna asked me to share about my stepchild, I began to open up. Though Johanna never expressed a desire to meet Alethea, and I didn't want them to meet either, she seemed to enjoy hearing stories and seeing pictures of Alethea. Johanna and Alethea were close in age, and Johanna often gave me advice on dealing with Alethea, knowing my struggles. After graduating high school, Johanna went to technical school and then started working as a wedding planner. Though she became busier after starting her job and we met less frequently, our bond remained strong. After getting the details over the phone, Johanna suddenly asked, "What's Alethea's last name again? How old is she?" She inquired about Alethea's details so suddenly, wanting to know everything. I told her everything I knew, and she said, "Maybe," and left the room for a moment. She returned hastily, speaking in a loud voice. "Alethea is having her wedding at our venue. My senior colleague is in charge." Then she added, "As your daughter-in-law, I can't give you the groom's information, but I have an idea," she said with a gleeful tone. Johanna's idea was to hire me as a temporary staff member at the wedding venue. Is that really okay? It's my fault for not being able to become her mother in the first place. I was filled with anger at Alethea, but I also felt inadequate and pathetic, lacking confidence. You've done enough. Alethea is old enough to be called an adult. We need to be strict this time, Johanna said, and I decided to go along with the plan. So I appeared at Alethea's wedding in the same suit as the venue staff. Seeing me suddenly appear as a staff member, Alethea was flustered. The groom, Hayden. "Mom? What does that mean? You said you were divorced and had no contact," asked. Hearing Hayden's words, Alethea stopped glaring at Johanna and hurriedly put on a forced smile for Hayden. "No, it's just, this person stalked me and found out everything." She made a desperate excuse. Hayden, looking puzzled, said, "We'll talk about it later," and the ceremony proceeded. I participated in the wedding as a staff member until the end. Alethea glared at me and Johanna several times, but I didn't mind. For the past few months, I took a break from my club work to train at the wedding venue and help with other weddings, working as a regular part-time employee. All for this moment today. Hayden's family asked Johanna for an explanation. "We are staff, so we cannot provide personal information. Please ask the bride." But she replied. Exhausted in body and mind, Alethea completed the ceremony. At the end of the wedding, I said to Alethea, "Congratulations, I wish you happiness," and left the scene. Alethea probably wanted to portray me as a stranger. She didn't give a proper response, only a frustrated expression was visible. Later, Johanna asked, "How about continuing to work at the venue?" But I told her, "My current lifestyle suits me," and returned to my club work. With the misunderstandings with Alethea now resolved, I can finally focus on work again, and my sales have been steadily increasing. On the other hand, Alethea found out about her mother's secrets coming to light and even getting married for money, leading to an immediate divorce. Later, Johanna told me that the wedding was far more extravagant than the average wedding. This meant that her marriage partner was quite wealthy. After the divorce, Alethea has been jumping from man to man, looking for someone to rely on, while moving from place to place. If Alethea had sincerely apologized and reached out to me, I would have accepted her as her mother, but it seems she absolutely doesn't want to rely on me. She has never come home or tried to contact me. Johanna and I have kept in touch regularly. Today, we were at the cafe where we reunited after a long time. Thank you so much for everything with Alethea. I'm a failure as a mother, no matter how old I get. I confessed to Johanna with a bitter smile. It's okay. You'll always be my beloved mom. Besides, I wanted to give you this. With that, she handed me her wedding invitation. My heart leaped at the thought of being able to attend as her mother.